now I want to start with an introduction to lateral work. Lateral work means work where the horse goes sideways. And I want you to think sort of like an outline. At the top, it says lateral work. And on one side of your column, you have turn on the forehand and leg yielding. And on the other side of the column, you have the advanced lateral exercises, shoulder in, haunches in, half pass, walk pirouettes, canter pirouettes. In this session, I want to concentrate on the beginning lateral exercises. Turn on the forehand and leg yielding, because that's part of your horse's language to understand the difference between a leg on the girth that says go forward and a leg behind the girth that says go sideways. And you know me, I like things to be very systematic. So I start teaching the horse this concept of moving away from a leg that's positioned behind the girth when I'm on the ground. And you can do the same thing too. You can do it in the barn when you're grooming, or you can do it like I'm going to show you now. The first thing that you would do is hold on to one rein a couple of inches from the horse's mouth, and you're going to face the back end of the horse. You're going to place one hand a few inches behind the girth where your leg would be when you ask the horse to go sideways. And just to help the young horse that doesn't know anything about going sideways, I'm going to bring his neck a little toward me so I have a little leverage, and then I'm going to place my hand behind the girth, and as he moves away from it, I'm going to say good boy. Then I'm going to do that on the other side. Take his neck a little toward me, put my hand behind the girth. As he moves sideways, I say good boy, and I go back and forth and do that till he has a little bit, good boy, of a concept of when I put my hand here, good boy, he's to move away from it. And that's what I would do before I even get on, so the horse has a little bit of an understanding of moving away from the leg that's behind the girth. Now I'm going to get on, and we're going to start with the turn on the forehand. Okay, so now that the horse has a basic understanding of when he feels something in a position behind the girth rather than on the girth, he's to move sideways. So the next easiest step for him is to learn an exercise called turn on the forehand, which is a 180-degree turn around the front legs. And the aids, I'll tell you the aids for turn on the forehand because they're exactly the same aids that we'll use when we do some leg yielding. So I'll go over the aids now. Basically, in both the turn in the forehand and leg yielding, it's an easy exercise for a young horse because there's no bend through the body like there is with the advanced lateral exercises. The spine of the horse is straight, and the horse has a little flexion. Remember, we talked about +1 and -1 flexion. A little positioning, a little flexion at the pole, just so you can see one eyelash or one nostril. And you flex the horse in the opposite direction of the way that you're going to move his body. Now, it's important when you're asking for the flexion that you support with the other rein so that he doesn't bend his neck, because to the degree that he bends his neck, he's not going to cross. So you have to have a good marriage of inner and outer aids. So you just flex him at the pole, and the neck stays absolutely straight. Now, basically, with your seat, you should stay centered and balanced over the horse. But riders have a tendency when they bring a leg back that they lean over that same leg that's behind the girth. So in that case, you're giving contradictory signals. Your leg is saying, put your body that way, but your body weight's saying, I'm not going to let you go. So here's kind of a cool exercise to give you some muscle memory so that you end up sitting in the middle of the horse. Kick your right foot out of the iron, stay upright, and pretend you're going to dismount. And feel how your weight goes down into your left iron and your hips go over to the left. Then you can do the same thing the other way. Kick your left foot out of the iron, pretend you're going to dismount to the right. Do that a couple of times. Feel your weight going into the right iron and your hips going over to the right. Then, when you ask your horse to either do the turn on the forehand or the leg yield, you just pretend you're dismounting off the side that you want his body to move. Then, of course, we have the position of the legs. One leg is on the girth, and one leg is positioned a couple of inches behind the girth. And in the language of the horse, that means the horse is to go forward and sideways. And with a good leg yielder, which you'll see in a little while, the legs are passively placed in that position. But when we do the leg yield, you have to make a value judgment. If the horse is going too much forward and he's not going sideways enough, the leg behind the girth becomes active, and you give a squeeze release with the calf on that side. If he's running sideways, too steeply sideways, kind of like a side pass, then the leg on the girth becomes active, squeeze release. But basically, we want the legs positioned passively, one leg on the girth and one leg behind the girth. Your weight centered, but pretending you're dismounting in the direction you want the body to go, and the flexion at the pole opposite the direction you want the horse to move. Now, like I said, we do things in a systematic way, so we start with a turn on the forehand. And that's a fairly simple exercise. The benefits are you introduce the horse, you make that leap from the work on the ground to the work under saddle. You introduce the horse to what it means when the leg is behind the girth. So it's a good preliminary exercise to your leg yields. It's also a very valuable exercise when you hack, because then you can open and close gates when you go in and out of fields without having to get off. However, there are some negatives to the turn on the forehand. Number one, it's generally done from a halt. You start in the halt, you do a 180-degree turn, and you halt again. And generally with riding, we never want to stop forward movement. So the fact that you do a turn on the forehand in the halt, and it makes it not a great exercise in terms of forward movement. The other thing is to think about what the name of the exercise is. It's a turn on the forehand. So we're putting the horse's balance onto the forehand, which is something we really never want to do. We always want to be shifting the center of gravity toward the hind legs. But it is a good preliminary exercise to teach the horse the concept of moving away from a leg that's positioned behind the girth. So I'm going to demonstrate the turn on the forehand now. Basically, I want the spine straight. I'm going to halt. I'm going to flex the horse to the right. I'm going to pretend I'm dismounting off the left iron. My right leg comes behind the girth. My left leg stays on the girth, and they're passively placed in that position. And I finish the 180-degree turn. Then I can walk forward a little bit and do it the other way. So I halt here, spine is straight, turn the key in the lock with my left wrist to just see his left eye. I'm going to pretend I'm dismounting off the right side of the horse. My right leg stays on the girth, left leg comes behind the girth, and I ask the horse to move away step by step from my left leg. And ho again. Good boy. So that's the turn on the forehand, and like I said, that's a good preliminary exercise to teach the horse the concept of moving away from the leg. But once your horse knows that, then you have a tool to open and close gates, and we really want to do away with the turn on the forehand. It sort of comes out of your program because it does put the horse on the forehand. And we go to the leg yields. And I love leg yielding. I use it for all kinds of things like problem solving, like a horse that doesn't pick up the correct lead or has difficulty lengthening his stride, or a horse that jigs. So I use a lot of leg yielding to solve basic problems. But just generally, I use leg yielding in my warm-up because it's an excellent loosening, stretching, warm-up, toe-touching type exercise for the horse. And it's very easy whether the horse is a young horse or a more advanced horse, because all horses have to warm up regardless of their level of training. And since the spine is straight, it's a very good toe-touching exercise, as opposed to all those lateral exercises in the other column, the shoulder in, haunches in, half pass, and pirouettes, that have a bend and they're more complicated, because by virtue of the bend, we ask the horse to engage the hind legs a lot. So I've just gone over the aids for leg yielding when I went over the aids for turn on the forehand, and the aids are basically the same. But what I want to talk about are places and patterns in the ring where you can do leg yielding. There are really 3 different places or patterns that you can do leg yielding, and your horse should be equally adept at all of those. There's leg yielding in a diagonal pattern, such as from the long side to the quarter line or center line, or from the quarter line or center line over to the long side. And the pattern that the horse makes in the dirt, with this diagonal pattern leg yield, if you were to be able to see the line I'm making on the ground, it's a diagonal line. And remember, I'll go over the aids for you again. I just moved away from my left leg, and now I'm going to move away from, I just moved away from my right leg. Now I'm going to move away from my left leg. So his body is going to be moving to the right. I flex him at the pole a little bit to the left. I pretend I'm dismounting off the right side of the horse, so I stay centered and balanced above him. My right leg is on the girth for forward movement. My left leg comes behind the girth for the sideways movement. And because he's a good leg yielder, my legs are passively placed in that position. If he was too much sideways or too much forward, the appropriate leg would become active. Now here's another place and pattern that you can do leg yielding. You can do it on a straight line. And there's two different positions of the horse's body. We can do head to the wall, which I'm doing now. And as long as the horse's spine is straight and his body is at about a 35-degree angle to the wall, you have good crossing. Or we can move the shoulders a little bit off the rail so he has room for his hindquarters, and I can leg yield in a tail to the wall position. And the aids are the same. I'll do the head to the wall leg yield again and go over the aids for you. His body is going to be moving to the left, so I'm going to flex him at the pole to the right. But I need to support with this left rein in order to keep the neck straight. I pretend I'm dismounting off the left side of the horse so I don't get left behind the movement. This left leg is on the girth and my right leg is behind the girth, passively placed in that position. So that's the straight line pattern. Now, let's talk about leg yielding on a circle. You can basically do what you just did, head to the wall, tail to the wall, along the arc of the circle, but doing it on a circle adds a little bit of a complication. So I keep his front legs on the arc of the circle. I do a -1 flexion to the right, and I ask the hindquarters to come in at about a 35-degree angle as I continue to come around the arc of the circle. Or I can flex him to the left, bring my left leg behind the girth, and ask his hindquarters to move out. Those are two ways to do it on a circle. One of my favorite leg yielding exercises, and it's very valuable for a horse that has trouble picking up a particular canter lead because it helps the horse flex and bend to the inside, and that helps him pick up the lead, is to spiral down. That means just decrease the size of the circle on a single track, and then you're going to increase the size of the circle in leg yielding. Now I'm going to sound like I'm going to contradict myself, but in this case, when the horse moves away from my leg, which will be my left leg to increase the size of the circle in leg yielding, that left leg is going to be on the girth and not behind the girth. But I'm not contradicting myself because I said that in a leg yield, the spine of the horse is straight. And remember, our definition of straightness from other lessons is that a straight horse on a curved line is bent. So my left leg in this case has to play double duty. It helps with the bend, but it also asks the horse to go sideways. Now you might ask, well, how does he know the difference between just staying on the little circle and going sideways? Couple of things. Number one, I pretend I'm dismounting off the right side of the horse. Okay. Number two, I turn my head and I look where I want him to go, because horses go where you will look. Number three, it's a thing of intention. Where do you intend the horse to go? So I'm cutting in again, I'm spiraling in. I'm going to shift my weight to the right seat bone as if I'm dismounting. I'm looking to the right, and I visualize my horse moving to the right. So those are the three places and patterns in the ring where you can do leg yielding. And you can mix and match for variety and fun. I do want to show you one little hint. If you're doing the head to the wall leg yield and you're not getting enough angle, rather than pushing with your leg that's behind the girth, you're going to use a quick opening rein, the rein that's near the fence. At the same time you open the rein, the leg behind the girth, you'll give a tiny little squeeze with that leg. If you keep the neck straight as you do that, the action of the rein will go back to the hind legs and his hindquarters will scoot over. So I'll show you that. I'll start with an angle that's not great enough, and then I'm going to do a quick opening rein. And what you have to remember is that once you've opened the rein, it's lost its effect, and then put it back in riding position. And he's in a good angle now, but if I wanted to increase the angle, I would open the right rein. You see the action of the rein go back to the hindquarters. I'm going to decrease the angle so you can see that again. Quick opening rein, and he really swings his hindquarters over. So that's a way that you can transfer some of the influence of going sideways from your legs, so you don't have to push real hard and get left behind the movement. Transfer the sideways aid, part of it, into the rein with that quick opening rein action. But remember, the other rein has to be solid like a side rein in order to prevent him from bending his neck. So that's a little hint if you're having trouble getting your 35 or 40 degrees. Now here's another thing you can do for variety and fun. I like to do a zigzag in leg yielding. It's a good suppleness exercise because the definition of suppleness is the horse's ability to smoothly change his balance forward and back and side to side. It's also a very good rider coordination exercise because you have to change which way you flex the horse, which direction you're sitting. Now I'm dismounting off the right side of the horse, and the position of your legs. And I just did a zig and a zag there, but you can even do 4 little zigzags to increase the suppleness of that exercise, where the horse has to smoothly change his balance left and right. Then let's add one final complication. We're going to do it in rising trot. And you have to change your posting diagonal as you do that. So, I'm going to come through the corner and go on the wrong diagonal. So that I'm sitting when the right hind leg is on the ground. Then I straighten him over B, change my posting diagonal, and I zag back in leg yielding. I'm going to do 4 little ones now. I don't want to come in as far because I want to use the hind legs equally. Wrong diagonal, come in 2 steps, straight, change diagonal, out, change diagonal, in, change diagonal, out. So that's an example of a very good rider coordination exercise and suppleness exercise for the horse in leg yielding.